Foreword to Woman and War by Olive Schreiner. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Noel Badrian. Woman and War by Olive Schreiner. Foreword. No excuse is needed for reprinting at this time from Olive Schreiner's classic Woman and Labour, her treatment of Woman and War. There is no other exposition of woman's natural hatred of war, so searching, so true, and so moving as this. Her inspired words on the subject, beyond their importance as a deeply significant statement of the attitude of women towards bloodshed and killing, to be read and taken to heart, in its bearing on the greatest war in history, are vital as a prophecy of how war in the future will pass away. It is a curious fact that the whole fate of the book, Woman and Labour, is connected with war. In the introduction, the author tells of the irreparable destruction of the nearly completed manuscript, of which the book as published is but a reminiscent fragment. She had finally finished, she tells us, the work on women, which had occupied a large part of her life since her early youth. There only remained revision and the writing of a preface before publication. She continues the story thus. In 1899, I was living in Johannesburg, when, owing to ill health, I was ordered suddenly to spend some time at a lower level. At the end of 2 months, the Boer War broke out. 2 days after war was proclaimed, I arrived at De Aar on my way back to the Transvaal. But martial law had already been proclaimed there, and the military authorities refused to allow me to return to my home in the Transvaal, and sent me down to the colony. Nor was I allowed to send any communication through to any person who might have extended some care over my possessions. Some 8 months after, when the British troops had taken and entered Johannesburg, a friend who, being on the British side, had been allowed to go up, wrote me that he had visited my house, and found it looted, and that all that was of value had been taken or destroyed. My desk had been forced open and broken up, and its contents set on fire in the centre of the room, so that the roof was blackened over the pile of burnt papers. He added that there was little in the remnants of paper of which I could make any use, but that he had gathered and stored the fragments till such time as I might be allowed to come and see them. I thus knew my book had been destroyed. Some months later in the war, when confined in a little up-country hamlet many hundreds of miles from the coast and from Johannesburg, with the brunt of the war at that time breaking round us, De Wet was said to have crossed the Orange River and to have been within a few miles of us, and the British columns moved hither and thither. I was living in a little house on the outskirts of the village, in a single room with a stretcher and 2 packing cases as furniture, and with only my little dog for company. 36 armed African natives were set to guard night and day at the doors and windows of the house, and I was only allowed to go out during certain hours in the middle of the day to fetch water from the fountain in the middle of the village, or to buy what I needed. I was allowed to receive no newspapers or magazines. A high barbed wire fence, guarded by armed natives, surrounded the village, through which it would have been death to try to escape. All day the pom-poms from the armoured trains that paraded on the railway line 9 miles distant could be heard at intervals, and at night there was the talk of the armed natives as they pressed against the windows, and the tramp of the watch with the endless "Who goes there?" as they walked round the wire fence through the long, dark hours when I was neither allowed to light a candle nor strike a match. When a conflict was fought nearby, the dying and wounded were brought in. 3 men belonging to our little village were led out to execution. Death sentences were read in our little marketplace. Our prison was filled with our fellow countrymen, and we did not know from hour to hour what the next would bring to us. Under these conditions, I felt it necessary I should resolutely force my thoughts at times from the horrors of the world around me, to dwell on some abstract question, and it was under these circumstances that this little book was written, being a remembrance mainly drawn from one chapter of the larger book. The armed native guards standing against the windows, it was impossible to open the shutters, and the room was therefore so dark that even the physical act of writing was difficult. A year and a half after, when the war was over and peace had been proclaimed for about 4 months, I with difficulty obtained a permit to visit the Transvaal. I found among the burnt fragments the leathern back of my book intact, but the front half of the leaves had been completely burnt away. The back half of the leaves next to the cover was still all there, but so browned and scorched with the flames that they broke as you touched them, and there was nothing left but to destroy it. I even then had a hope that at some future time I might yet rewrite the whole book. But life is short, and I have found that not only shall I never rewrite the book, but I shall not have the health even to fill out and harmonize this little remembrance from it. It is with some pain that I give out this fragment. I am only comforted by the thought that perhaps all sincere and earnest search after truth, even where it fails to reach it, yet often comes so near to it that other minds more happily situated may be led, by pointing out its very limitations, to obtain a larger view. End of the foreword.